Shalom, welcome to another episode of Inspiration from Zion. I'm Jonathan Feldstein, and I have the privilege of being your host, coming to you from the Judean Mountains here in Israel. I like to refer to it as the original Bible Belt. Inspiration from Zion is a program of the Genesis 123 Foundation, whose mission is to build bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are new, unique, and meaningful. I pray that you will find this, all of those. Through this program, we're excited to connect you to people and stories in and relating to Israel, experiencing aspects of life here that you might not otherwise know about. We want this to be interactive, so please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com and send along any questions and any comments about any topic anytime. Or you can reach us at genesis123.co and follow and like Inspiration from Zion on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Today is a conversation, as I often do. I've been anticipating for a very long time, but most so because this is the first time that we've actually begun on Inspiration from Zion, a series. This is part two in a conversation that we're called "What Are We Thinking?", which is both a declarative and a question. And we have a panel back, five of the six who were able to join us last month. We're going to be doing this every month between now and the upcoming election, which is scheduled at the end of October, with all of us who are currently undecided voters. We'll see how that progresses as well. And I got great feedback. There was content that allowed me to write a couple of articles focusing on some of the top issues that we as a panel focused on the last time. And I'm looking forward to the content. It's one of these topics because it's going to be more and more heated as we get closer and closer to the election, and we're certainly going to be uh, looking at it from a wide lens, a wide view about academic things, but especially this week. And we're going to touch on some of the issues that are very hot current events that are happening in Israel, and then those apply. For those who are following live, I do encourage you and invite you to use the Q&A feature to ask any of your questions, which we'll do our best to integrate. And for those of you who didn't know that there was a live opportunity, please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com, and we will find a way to get you to join the next conversation, God willing, in July, where you can also join us live. I wanted to begin today by having a conversation about the political parties. It's inevitable that we're going to be using in this conversation and the series of conversations various terms in Hebrew, specifically names. We're not going to talk right now about, although we will allude to for sure, the individuals, the people. But I want to speak about what I'm referring to, the second of three Ps, the parties. The policies also are all part of that. And what I've asked for our panelists to do is each to take a couple of parties to give a really quick overview. So when we mention them, for people who are not familiar with the parties, or maybe familiar but not in depth, that we can have a quick overview before we jump in to the conversation itself. Arnie, your name begins with A, so I want to start with you. And we had designated you three and a half parties that you were going to quickly give an overview about. And by the way, I want to make one note here, with the exception for one that we're going to save for the end with Rolene. All of the parties that we're currently speaking about are parties that are currently represented in the Knesset. That's important because at a second conversation, maybe next month or the month after, we'll talk about the fringe parties that could be that could surprise any of us. So Arnie, you were gonna, in any particular order, talk about Yesh Atid, National Unity, Blue and White. I'm not even sure what that's called anymore. Yisrael Beitenu, and oh, we were throwing in New Hope with Gidon Sar, even though I'm not sure if they fully merged with Likud or not.
Okay. It's interesting when we talk about the parties and their names. I think most Israelis still call the parties by the leader of the party. And so I will mention that just so people understand what we're referring to if you're not familiar with the name itself. There's always a problem, by the way, when you go to the ballot box. Sometimes you don't always see the person's name. When you see the party, you're
Correct.
not sure parties I want to, like, it's a little confusing. Anyway, we have a new party called Biyachad, and you said you only want to talk about parties that were currently in the Knesset. Well, Biyachad means together in Hebrew, and it's two parties that are currently in the Knesset and have come together, biyachad, together, to form a new party. It's under the leadership of Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid. Both of them had done a rotation as prime minister a few years back. Um, they tend to be more center, and I would even say center right on many issues, perhaps center left on some other issues. Uh, it's the centrist parties in general. You hear a lot about them come across very differently than the United States, in particular, where here on the left means something slightly different than what the left would be in the States. Anyway, so I'll give you some examples of what Biyachad stands for. In the Haredi draft, it's one of the biggest issues of the ultra-Orthodox serving in the army here. The ultra-Orthodox have been protesting, do not want to serve en masse, and the Biyachad party feels that they should minimally serve and or do national service. The Iran and other security issues, they tend to be hawkish in that area. And one of the biggest issues up until October 7th, 2023, was judicial reform. And it was felt, many people, a lot of protests were going on. Many people in the country felt that it was being rammed down the throats of people by the current coalition. And so that issue will come back at some point of how the country can deal with the judicial reform issues. There are many smaller issues with it, and the Yachad Party feels in that issue that it should be done through consensus and not just 60, not a 51-49% vote. That should be done a much larger consensus. We have the National Unity Party, run by Benny Gantz. He's a former IDF chief of staff, and he's also centrist. Again, the examples would be in the Haredi draft. He believes that they should serve, but he's pretty much lax on how quickly and how many and how frequently that should take place. On Iran, he's very hawkish, like most Israelis are. In judicial reform, he also believes in a broad consensus-based process. I think you gave me Yisrael Beitenu.
Correct.
Yisrael Beitenu, which means Israel is our home in Hebrew. Yisrael Beitenu. It's run by Avigdor Lieberman. He's a Russian immigrant, and his party has, for many years already, been around. They've been pretty consistent. He is, it used to be strictly Russians, and because we took in hundreds of thousands of Russians, eligible voters, right, plus kids and others, but that's why he gets in. But he appeals to many other people as well these days. People have seen him around. He's served in many positions in the government, and so he is it's fascinating. He's a center right wing secular party, and so he's very much against anybody not serving in the army, right? So the Haredi, he believes very strongly that everybody should get in, no exemptions. He's very hawkish on Iran in terms of security. And on judicial reform, he prefers more of the secular liberal framework and not, with strong checks and balances, is the way I would put it, perhaps. And then you gave me the fourth party to do
New
was
Hope.
Gidon.
New Hope. Gidon
Yeah,
Sar.
yeah. In Hebrew, it's Tikva Chadasha. Tikva, many people know from the national anthem, Hat Tikva, the hope. He's Tikva Chadasha, the new hope. He joined with, I think, with Gantz, was it, a few years ago, and then he split back, and now he's a Likud refugee of some sort from the Netanyahu's party. Um, and it's interesting, okay? I think, he supports Haredi draft that the ultra Orthodox should go into the army, but he's not very hard line about it. And so, take that for what it's worth. On Iran, again, hawkish. If he's, center right, he's going to be that way. And on judicial reform, he felt, from what I read, that he's moderate and consensus based to make any changes in the way the system runs here.
Right.
That's it.
The one thing I'm not clear about, and I don't know if anyone here knows or if we know yet, if he's running on his own as the New Hope Party or if he's already formally merged himself back into Likud, which is where he left to start New Hope. But he currently has a party with I think two or three other representatives that came back to support the government several months ago. Batya, as long as we're talking about government. I had asked you to talk about Likud and the two right nationalist religious parties. Can you just roll through those quickly, please?
Okay. I have actually the oldest, just probably one of the oldest parties in the country. Likud began as a small liberal and Cherut. The liberals in Israel traditionally means anti-socialists, that is free enterprise capitalism. And the Cherut part was Gachal in the beginning, is from the pre-state underground, those who were not with the Haganah and the Palmach, which were with Labor Party. Labor doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Let's focus on the ones that you're
Yeah.
talking about, please.
They were the outsiders, and the Jabotinsky followers, and the anti-socialists, and they have merged with help. Likud means joined up together, and it was Arik Sharon that helped Menachem Begin put the party together as one big bloc, and they shocked the country in 1977 by winning the most seats and being able to put together a coalition, because in Israel there's no party that gets 61 seats to run the government. You have to have, and so you have to make a deal. You have to make deals, and now deal is a dirty word.
Batya, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt. I want to focus specifically on what the parties are
Okay,
representing, not the
so what
history.
they represent now, they claim to be right-wing, strong patriot, but their policies have always been centrist. And one thing that when they did take over in 77, the only bureaucracy that was cleaned up was the financial, so that socialism left and free enterprise and capitalism came in. But everything else was left the same. And that's why there's the need today for judicial reform, because left can't win an election, but they still run the courts and they make major decisions. Now, and Bibi has promoted himself in policy as centrist. He is centrist, though he makes speeches as if he's on the right. Now, you get into the other two parties. I mean, this is it. I'm a CPA's daughter. I'm interested in the bottom line. He's a centrist at best. And then you have the two religious parties.
Religious Zionists under Bezalel
You
Smotrich.
have what's known as Smotrich's party, which is the Religious Zionist Party, but it was actually founded when the National Religious Party, which was one of the original parties in Knesset, didn't get enough votes, so it's been remarketed, and they're very much like the National Religious Party. They managed to make a deal with whoever's in power, and they try to always be in the coalition. And he also acts like he's very strong on settling the land, but he they together with Likud have destroyed more communities than they've ever built. And when they say we're founding new ones, they're just recognizing those that have existed for 20 something years.
I feel
And if
like
you
we're
take a
getting into the
look at the
commentary.
list, they repeat. That's their idea. It's all marketing. And then
Itamar
you
Ben
have
Gvir and Otzma
Ben
Yehudit.
Gvir and his Otzma Yehudit. He was as he
Jewish
was
strength.
yeah, and Otzma is like really strength. It comes from the etzem is the bone. It comes it's something very very strong, and he himself was did not come from a religious home. He came from an Iraqi secular family, and he became more and more religious. He got involved with Jewish pro settlement, pro kahana. Kahana's Mayor Kahana is a legend in certain circles. And as a kid, he got into trouble with the law because
But let's
there
talk
are
about his policies, please. I don't want to
and
talk
his
about his background.
policies
I'm going to keep you
he
all
has
focused.
done.
We got,
He's
got to
in
be
charge.
focused.
Okay, what he has done as the head of police, he has brought in more religious and even Haredi policemen. He's made it possible for Jews to pray as if it's a free country on the Temple Mount in the few hours Jews are given, but much more freedom of religion than Jews have ever had. He's out and out pro settlement, Jewish settlement. And he did temporarily make a little deal with Bibi when he didn't like the agreement Bibi had to try to bring out more of our hostages. So he was out of the government for a short period of time, but came back in.
Okay,
So
you're talking about the political machinations. I was wanting to focus more on the policies, but we're going to leave it at that.
I said he's given more rights to Jews on the Temple Mount.
Okay,
He's
you said
made the
that.
police more religious, and he's strongly the rights of Jews over everyone. He's considered extremely strong in that,
Thank you.
but he's part of, that's
Okay.
basically it for the three of them.
As long as we're still in the government, Yehuda, I want to ask you, I asked you if you would pick up talking about the two ultra-Orthodox parties. You just need to unmute, please.
Okay, sure. So there are actually three ultra-Orthodox parties. Two of them have historically been merged together. Um, Before that, I wanted to define the terms a little bit because people have been using the term Haredi a lot here. Haredi is the Hebrew term, and it refers to the ultra-Orthodox population in Israel. Um, and they are represented largely by these three parties who run together as two lists, two groups for the Knesset. The first one is Shas, which is the Sephardi party, the party representing the or what they call the Oriental, Jews from North Africa and Middle East. Um, they historically have been run and controlled, well, run anyway. The party leader is Aryeh Deri. Um, and their policies are essentially in two areas. One is they support the ultra-Orthodox community, the Haredi community in Israel and its interests, um, which are largely religious interests. And the second is that they are also a social policy party. They champion the poorer segments of the society, the segments of society that need more in terms of welfare, in terms of public health care. They tend to want those ministries when they get into the coalition. Um, uh, that's them basically, and the other two parties are Agudat Israel, which is Hasidic, and Degel HaTorah, which is not Hasidic. They are the two, and
Right.
they merge together. They merge together to form United Torah Judaism, which some people just refer to as the Haredim, and they are the Ashkenazic ultra-religious party, meaning their population group is from Europe for the most part, or their ancestry is from Europe, Um, and they do not really have much of a social agenda. Their agenda is almost exclusively representing the ultra-Orthodox interests in politics. In both cases, but more so among the United Torah Judaism Party, the policy of the party is dictated by a single unelected rabbinic leader, um, and sometimes in consultation with a council of other unelected rabbinic leaders. And they, whatever they decide, they dictate to their members of Knesset to follow in terms of policy decisions, in terms of how they vote, in terms of whether they support the government on a particular on a particular issue or not. And like I said, most of those issues they don't really have much to say about. But when it does come to issues that relate to the ultra-Orthodox community, whether it's the Haredi, right, ultra-Orthodox, the Haredi draft, or issues of keeping Shabbat in the public sphere, or in the case of Shas, issues that have a social agenda attachment, then they do have something to say. And if the government seems not to be following their their policy preferences, let's say, they're not afraid to pull their support out of the government as they did about a year ago. And in the case of the Haredi draft in particular, it's their followers that take to the streets and that engage in demonstrations across the country, sometimes even pirate demonstrations across the country. There were demonstrations today in the Netanya area and in Bnei Brak, and members of Knesset, including the party leaders of the United Torah Judaism, actually participated in those protests.
Wow. Okay.
So
Thank you for that. And good distinction in terms of them also being at the forefront of the current protests. Mark, I want to come to you. You have a big task ahead of you. We've been talking about right, centrist, not right, maybe centrist. You're going to take on parties that typically are on the left, which we've mentioned Labor. Labor has merged into something called the Democrats or Democratim. I'm frankly not sure what that is all about. And also, it's a very important conversation to talk about the various Arab parties that we have that are currently in Knesset. Would you jump in?
Yeah, definitely, Jonathan. Yeah, so anyways, I'll start with the Democratim or the Democrats, which is led by Yair Golan. And like you said before, the Democrats are pretty much a continuation of the Labor Party or Havoda, which is a very historic party, also Ben Gurion, and then it started diminishing, broke off into a whole bunch of different parties, Kadima, and you also had Tnua or Ford, whatever, with Tzipi Livni
What's
and
the? I want
everything.
to focus.
And
What's
now you
their
have
view? What's the policies?
yeah, so
It's
anyways, so
was the
like I said
developer.
before, is when they broke up and then they came back together as Democratim, they picked up a lot of members from Meretz, which was a socialist party, which is the older socialist, more far left political party. So now you have Yair Golan, who is the leader of the party, who actually was elected to be the head of the party when they were Avodah, and then they switched to Democratim, and they have also a lot of social democrat policies. One of the members is also Gilad Kariv, who is also a reform rabbi, and he's one of the members on the list now. And you have Naam Lazimi, who is more socialist. Uh, so they are for a two-state solution. They have more of a social democrat party when it comes to social issues and economic issues. And Yair Golan actually was he was a candidate to be the chief of staff for a time back in the early 2010s. And then he made a few comments and stepped down from the army. And then he started his politics. So they are distinctly far to the left, much further than Benny Gantz when it
Okay.
comes to policies about the settlements and the two-state solution. Then you have the Arab parties, which it is still unknown whether or not they will come together and form a joint Arab list, as they have in the past back in 2015, when they came together as a joint Arab list. And then there you have in the polls, they're usually lumped together as just being the Arab parties and having one single ideology, but they're very different. You have the largest party in the joint Arab list, which is Hadash, which is pretty much the Democratic Front for Peace and Equality, That's what Hadash means in Russian English. And they are a big tent party, which is mainly made up of different factions of Arab and Jewish parties. In the beginning, they started out as the joining of Maki, which is the Israeli Communist Party, which is now largest faction in Hadash. And they also started out as also having the Black Panthers, the Israeli Black Panther Party, which were made up of mainly Moroccan Jews who made Aliyah during the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
And so they still are a Jewish and Arab party. Their number 3 in their list is actually Ofer Kasif, who is a Jew, an Israeli Jew that lives in Rishon LeZion.
Thank you.
Either Rishon or in Rehovot, in one of those cities. And he's
It's
actually
okay.
the number 3
We're
on
not
the
going
list.
for coffee.
Okay, yeah,
It,
yeah.
it
Okay,
might be
yeah.
important. It might be important to note that by their party constitution, the number 3 on the list has to be a Jew.
Yeah,
Very
The
good.
rest of them in
exactly.
general are not.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
most of them in general are not. Also, when you look at who makes up Hadash, is also their constituency. They are not religious. The Arabs in the party are not religious Arabs. A lot of them are Muslim, a lot of Christians, but they are a ideologically non-religious party.
Okay.
Very much communist in their economic policy, and they are for a two-state solution. Okay,
Okay.
and then you have the second largest Arab faction, which is Ram, who are an Islamist party, and their main constituency are a lot of religious, a lot of Bedouins, and they're mainly their main constituency are in the south of Israel, are in the
Got it.
Negev.
And important to note that in the previous government, Ram actually served as part of the government, which was, if I'm not mistaken, the first time that we had an Arab party. But it's important to note, Mark, I've been waiting for you, and you did a really nice summary of all of it. For people who are following who don't understand the fact that forget how the democracy works, the fact that we have multiple Arab parties merged into some sort of unity group, and then they may all come together. And Ram split off from that group, the Joint List, to become its own independent party. But they typically, for the last number of years, last number of elections, poll at and have in the range of about 10% of the seats in the Knesset. Which is important to note, and will challenge the thinking and understanding of others here
Yeah,
who
I'd also like to note that they have the potential of the Joint Arab List have the potential of actually heading the opposition in
wow,
the
that's
next
true.
election
That's
as the
true if they
second,
come
what's the
together.
second largest party.
Okay,
If they come
that's true.
together, but I don't think they will.
Okay.
According to how it looks, it does not look like Mansour Abbas is interested in joining
To
Joint Arab
to
List.
to be determined. Let me
Yeah.
move to Rolene. Rolene, you were not able to join us in our first conversation, so let me just take this opportunity to say how glad I am that you're here. Also, introduce you a journalist that needs to be followed. You have a regular program and publication, The Lay of the Land, and also are the international spokesperson for WIZO, right? And so I want to acknowledge that. I asked you, and I'm deliberately holding you till the end, the last party, because now we're going to talk about not the only personality, but the only party that's not currently in Knesset because its founder was in the Knesset and resigned, split off from a party, and started his own. So if you would please jump in and talk a little bit about Gadi Eisenkot and his Yashar party.
Okay, so first of all, I'm delighted to join everybody. And just a small correction, I'm the head of public diplomacy for World WITO, which is
I
a
promoted you.
voluntary position because, hey, I'm a glutton for punishment. So I have Gadi Eisenkot, who is also a former Ramatkal or IDF chief of staff. I have his new party called Yashar, which means straight or upright. And it's very interesting how it got its name. It got its name from Eli Sharabi, the former hostage, who said that, the issues here are neither right or left, but straight. And his ideology is very much Zionism. And I think we all agree Zionism is a word, is an identity, is an ideology that we need to, as a people, regardless of what political party you follow or will vote for, that we need to reclaim from being another ism. So he founded the party with Sheer Siegel, who's the daughter of former hostage Keith Siegel. And it has a very varied grouping. There are people as diverse as Yoav Horowitz, who is the former Director General for Prime Minister Netanyahu, and former members of Knesset Matan Kahana of National Unity, and Tal Russo and Manuel Trachtenberg of Labour. So I would put it very much center left on some issues and center right on some issues. I think especially with regards to security, what I do find is most of the parties are pretty much the same and take the same approach. And Eisenkot is no different. He's pretty hawkish on security. But the party has 10 steps for working what they call towards Israel's prosperity. A state commissioner for the 7th of October to assist in the investigation and to assist in the rehab of victims. National security, strengthening the IDF, fortifying borders, and expanding the Abraham Accords and expanding what they call the Circle of Peace to ensure a Jewish majority. What that means exactly is a bit unclear. Military service, working towards integration of both the Haredi, or as was explained, the ultra-Orthodox, and Arab Israelis into the IDF to ensure equality in burden. I actually quite like that phrase, equality in burden. Education, to establish a core education curriculum for all Israelis in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence, and also to decentralize powers and improve technological studies. To restore security and streets on Israel by tackling crime, especially in Arab communities. Cost of living is a big issue for them, which I think we all can understand. They say to integrate all of Israeli society into the labor and service markets, provide state incentives for those who bear security and economic burden, along with public investment into transportation, education, healthcare, and the periphery.
Okay.
Democracy and public service to protect minority rights, human rights, and the rule of law, to maintain legislative and judicial independence. So that's their stance on the judicial reforms, and to enact term limits for prime minister, and to keep public service professional for the benefit of Israeli citizens, to reduce social polarization and renew public trust, to preserve Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, to promote inclusive and respectful Judaism so that all citizens can maintain their faith and lifestyle and expand.
Roly, I need to interject. Is this a 10-point plan?
This is their points, yeah.
Okay. It feels like it's a lot longer.
Jewish immigration to strengthen Aliyah, and they have a view towards the centennial of the State of Israel, to start planning towards the centennial that will make Israel a prosperous model state based on partnership, brotherhood, and mutual responsibility. And basically, that's their platform.
Yeah.
It's a lot more social than it is anything else, and pretty much across the board. I think a lot of parties will subscribe to some of their platform points and not to others, but I think what they're trying to go for is something for everyone that will represent everybody but maintain a Jewish majority.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's interesting that we're finishing this section, which went, I apologize, longer than I had anticipated or hoped, but it's very good with a actual formal platform. It doesn't mean that the other parties don't necessarily have them, but in Israel, we don't frequently have conversations about parties and platforms. So it's interesting that you chose to do that, and I'm grateful. And also, I wanted to use this opportunity to highlight, especially for people in America who understand red and blue, Republican and Democrat, and vote and typically vote for a party and or a person and down a list that this is 12, 15 parties that we just referred to, and these are just the ones, except for Gadi Eisenkot's party that Rolene mentioned. All are currently represented in the Knesset, and we haven't even touched the other startup parties, the fringe parties, some of which we will come to. So it's important to have this conversation. Now, I'd like you to continue. Before we jump into some of the current events, I'd like to just open up. And Erica, I didn't give you any parties because you were on deadline. I want to ask you to start us off. When we're looking at the vote, forget the individual policies and parties. How much, as an undecided voter, might you be influenced by the polls? For instance, if we see that Gadi Eisenkot, with all this long list of great sounding ideas, and they are, um, starts to creep up and become the second possible vote getter, and we don't want, and I'm just making up the scenarios, and we don't want Likud and the current government to be in its in power in the same format beginning next year. Would you be influenced to vote for a Gadi Eisenkot because
Um,
he or someone else? Do the polls matter in your decision?
Not at all. I don't believe the polls are necessarily accurate, and I really vote with my heart. I feel like for me, it's the only way to do it. So I really ignore the polls because if you start doing machinations about, well, if this one goes with that one, and then I like that one, but I can't have this one, you're never going to vote like in a good way, and you'll just like walk out frustrated. So you got to do, in my opinion, what your heart tells you, who's the closest to what you believe. That's
Okay.
what I'm going to do.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's very helpful. Does anyone here feel like they're influenced by the polls?
I'm only moderately influenced by them. They don't dictate who I'm going to vote for, but I'm very highly unlikely to vote for a party that seems like it's not going to cross the minimum threshold to get into the Knesset. I don't want to waste my vote. Um, there was one case where I did vote for a party that ended up not crossing the threshold, but even up to election day, according to all of the polls, it seemed that they would cross the threshold, so I didn't have as much of a problem voting for them. And it actually made me want to vote for them more because I figured maybe my vote would put them, over the threshold or something like that.
Right.
But in general, I won't vote for a party that doesn't seem like it'll cross the threshold. And beyond that, I don't really think that that the polls dictate my vote because I generally don't vote for one of the larger parties anyway.
Okay. Good
I
point.
should add, though, that I agree with you about that. I'm not going to vote for a party that seems like it's not going to be able to do anything,
So
because your vote really does count.
let me
Yeah.
define that, because for those who are following, I don't know how other parliamentary democracies work. Ours is unusual for sure, but for those who are not used to the parliamentary democracy in Israel, if a party doesn't get more than 3.75, right,
Point
percent of
five.
the 3.25% of the vote, then of the vote, not of the potential voters, then they don't even begin to make it. So a party could get 3%, and as Yehuda said, will wait that those are all wasted votes. Each that could be 100,000 votes that just go to nowhere, and then beef up the parties that we don't necessarily want to support. Arnie, were you going to say something?
I was just going to give the threshold number and the idea that what a lot of parties also have, even parties who don't agree with each other, they have what are called the leftover vote agreement. And so
Ah, so
each,
so explain that. Explain that.
right. So each seat is worth, let's just make up numbers, 50,000 votes.
Yeah.
If you get 57,000 votes, you don't get an extra seat above the 50,000 that you received. That 7,000 goes to a different party that you've made an agreement with. That they can have your leftover votes. And so
Right.
sometimes at the end of the day, the seats can change by 1 or 2 seats for different parties based on the leftover votes as well. But those are usually, right, agreeing with Yehuda, those are all parties who got in and not the ones who
Yeah.
didn't make the threshold.
Okay. Before we move forward, does anyone want to say anything further about how polls may or may not influence? I'm not looking for extra comments, but anything influential. Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Mark.
I'd like to also mention, add to what Arnie said, that this is the reason why you have the Joint Arab List, which is a technical bloc, which is being which they want to push, which Mansour Abbas Ram is trying to block, is to get the votes of Balad, which is the fourth Arab party, which can't pass the threshold according to polls, and then they have the Joint Arab List, and then have those votes. So those votes won't be wasted.
It's
But
like
if
And
the
also
threshold
like
didn't always,
Ben
which didn't always
Gvir
exist.
and Ben Gvir and Smotrich usually run together so that way they'll also have a better chance of getting those leftover votes and they get more. So if one was almost um, at the um, at the threshold, it doesn't matter because together they both get in no problem, and they just have to work out between them in advance what the system is between them.
But
And this
but
is
that's not
very
happening
common.
now. That's not happening this year, it appears.
We don't know yet.
Okay,
The
fine, fair enough.
agreements are usually signed about 3 weeks before the election,
Oh
and
dear.
by the time those discussions are had, most parties realize that they're going to need to sign with somebody, so they pair off.
Yeah,
Got it. Okay,
there's
thank you.
plenty of time. It could be done at the very last minute. There's a
So
lot of last minute stuff.
I want to go down one similar or parallel rabbit hole, perhaps, and maybe come back to you, Erica, because I seem to remember in the last conversation, you alluded to the fact that you didn't care about voting, and tell me if I'm misrepresenting or misremembering incorrectly, that you didn't care who the party you voted for might make a coalition with you. As you said very succinctly tonight, you're just going to go with your heart. So my question is kind of an open question because, as I think Batya was explaining, we've never had a scenario where one party has won 51% of the votes and therefore no need for a coalition. There's always been a coalition. When we vote, we're also at least mindful of the fact that somehow there's going to be a government formed with multiple parties, as many as 7 or 8 or 10, perhaps, that come together to form a government. Erica, am I misrepresenting you? And or how do you feel
Um,
about that idea?
well, like we were talking about, there's a lot of established parties, and then there's parties that stick around maybe for one election or two elections, and then they're gone. So I'm not going to vote for a party that seems to me to just be like a passing fancy. And to me, I usually have a few parties in mind that seem the most substantial to me in terms of who they have and what their record is in terms of the people. And like, let's say, for example, Eisenkot or now Bennett and Lapid. So for me, they seem like they would agree on a lot of different things, and it's likely that they might in the future be together. And I would be okay with that. But there are parties that I just cannot stomach being in the coalition. So it's known that if you vote for Likud, it's going to be with the ultra orthodox parties. I can't take it anymore, so I will not vote for them. And never mind the fact that Likud, I don't even know what they stand for anymore. But I'll go with my heart in terms of like voting for Eisenkot versus Bennett, or even Lieberman, because I feel like he's a real politician, like a real person that has
Okay.
ideas and has integrity, unlike some of the others. So
Okay.
that's kind of what I mean. It's not that I don't pay attention at all, and I know that a coalition has to be made. It's just that I don't want to put aside a party that I think is really good because I think they might not make it.
Okay.
Does that
All
make
right, but
sense?
yes, but I want to ask the rest of you to what extent the question is to what extent when you're voting and choosing who to vote for, which we all have a task to do in the next few months, how much of the factor of that is who they might make a coalition with. Erica just said, I won't stomach the ultra-Orthodox parties and Likud as part of a government, so she knows that there are certain parties not to vote for in that case. But how much for any of you want to comment quickly on who they might make a coalition with, and therefore what government might be formed? Mark, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in and say that this is for a lot of people. One of the problems with voting for people like Benny Gantz or Avigdor Lieberman, who would have thought because there is a chance that they could join a coalition with Likud, and that's the reason why not to vote for these people. And also on the left, for a lot of Arab citizens, not to vote for Ram instead of the other Arab parties, because Ram, Mansour Abbas has stated that he has no objections really to joining either Netanyahu or Bennett and Lapid.
I
Uh,
think I think
There's
that
also
I think that it's unfortunate a little bit that we pretty much know where the coalition lines are going to be drawn. It's been that way basically since 2019 that the coalition lines are drawn pretty much the same way. It's the current government coalition on one side and the current opposition on the other. And I don't honestly see too many people moving from, or too many political parties anyway, moving from one group to the other. Um, there's a very, very, very slight chance that Eisenkot might go with the government, but even that I don't see so much. The only real swing party that I could see going both ways is Gidon Sar, and that leaves basically the decision of whether you're going to vote for the parties that are currently in power, the parties that are not currently in power. And I think that based on what I've heard from the people here, that there are at least three of us who would vote for any of you want to talk about, being an undecided voter. It's not an undecided voter with 16 parties in front of you. I think that there are at least three of us that have, narrowed it down, maybe four of us already, who've narrowed it down to maybe three parties, but we can't decide among the three of them because there's too much, they too much occupy the same political space. We'll put it that
The
way.
other the other scenario, of course, Yehuda, which I think came up in our first conversation, is the possibility, remote as it may be, that four or five parties, including Likud, including Yashar with Gadi Eisenkot, including together with
Bennett.
Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid and maybe Lieberman, I don't know, or someone else might form a centrist right-left government and not have these fringes.
I don't
there's also
necessarily see
a
the Likud joining. No, let's put it this way. I don't necessarily see the Bennetts and the Liebermans and the Eisenkots and the Gantzes, if he passes the threshold, joining with the Likud. They've been very, very strident in the past that they won't join another Likud government because Netanyahu was the party leader, and they basically he's burned bridges with them in the past, with all of them. Um, I just, I have a big problem imagining that they would join a Netanyahu-led government.
You're probably right. Batya, you were going to jump in.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
except
Let's let
that we,
or Arnie, let Batya come in.
Okay, there's also an idea that, and it has been in the past, that I would vote for somebody not because they're going to join the coalition, but because I wanted them to be there as that extra voice so that it's not a whole bunch of yes men. And that
Okay.
was an important thing. I was counting on Matan Kahana doing that in the present Knesset. He was so fantastic in that short year. He was the Minister of Religious Affairs, and he totally flopped.
Okay.
We never heard him.
That
And that really politically
yeah.
broke my heart.
That goes to a question that I believe Yehuda brought up last time, which I hoped we would get to, but we probably won't today. But it's the down list, which I want to put on the agenda for subsequent next month or the month after. Arnie, you were going to jump in.
yeah, well, two things. One is you mentioned about the political parties and their platforms. Even if you know the platform of a party, very few parties stick to their platform. There's so many changes when reality shows up, and so while things sound really good on paper, I'm not convinced that that's what happens. I agree with Erica that you have to kind of look at the people involved. I think I said it last time. I tend to vote for a person. I want to find the right person I can count on. Like Batya was saying, I want my voice heard. I think that person will, bring it forward, even if they're not in the majority.
I
Um,
think I think that that's an important point because it goes back to something we were talking about last week also about how we're voting. We get to the point, both of your comments, right, that they don't hold to the platform and that you vote for a person. I think what ends up happening a lot in this country is that people end up voting for the personality rather than the party or the ideology. Um, and to go back a little bit to the comment that I made just previously, I'm one of those people. Okay, my vote is basically narrowed down to one of three parties right now, and the only thing that makes the difference between them, their platforms are basically the same thing. I know that all three of them are going to get into the Knesset. So what difference does my vote make between
Ah,
these three parties?
that's
Okay.
interesting.
And I think that the answer to that is that it's a matter of relative strength within the coalition that they're a part of. Okay, so for the sake of argument, if you take somebody like Gadi Eisenkot, we've been talking about him a lot tonight. If you take somebody like Gadi Eisenkot and you think to yourself, okay, he's in the center together with four other parties, okay, but I want his voice to be stronger than, for instance, a guy like Yair Lapid, okay, to throw out a name. So that would lead me to vote for Eisenkot rather than to vote for Bennett and Lapid because I want Eisenkot's voice stronger. They're all
Okay.
going to be there and they're all going to be in the same team regardless who I vote for. But if I vote for and a sufficient number of people vote for the same person, his voice will be stronger within the coalition. He might get a higher position in the cabinet, etc.
well,
Good
yes,
observation.
that's exactly how it translates into who gets which ministerships, what government offices they run, et cetera. So it's a direct correlation between that.
Well, but also we saw with
Usually.
the previous government when Naftali Bennett's party had 6 seats and he became prime minister.
Was it
It's because
seven?
we also had
It,
seven.
it was
He also
originally seven and one person
Seven.
pulled out.
Correct. We also had
More,
this
yeah,
such
well,
scenario where the president gets to pick who's the person who and party that can most likely form the government, and it's not always going to be the one who has the most votes. So thank you for that. That's all very clear. Rolene, you're the only one who didn't comment on the issue relating to uh, how you would feel in terms of who they would make a coalition with. How does that influence your vote, or is that not something you want to comment on?
Uh, the issue of polls, just to take a step back for a second, I don't pay much attention to polls because if you follow the polls, they're different in every publication or every channel that takes a poll. I'm more likely to be influenced, first of all, on my own value system that dictates who I am most likely to vote for and who they are most likely to form a coalition with. And I think for many people in this country, October the 7th and what has transpired just before and since has been seismic in determining how we're going to approach this election. I think this is probably one of the most critical elections we will be having in our history because of
Yeah,
the time, the circumstances, our placing in the world. So who joins coalitions is of great importance to my vote, and who is likely to hold what portfolios when the inevitable horse trading begins
right.
is very, very important to me. I think whichever parties are tasked with forming a coalition have to think very, very clearly that we cannot make mistakes that we have made in the past. We are a country at a tipping point for a variety of reasons and have to approach this perhaps a lot more differently than we have in the past and a lot more strategically and a lot more with what is best for this country and its people, rather than individuals.
Thank you. This is certainly going to be a theme that we're going to inevitably weave through the rest of our conversations, because we went a little bit long on the parties, which the more we have been talking now, the more I'm glad that we did, only to give a sense of the confusion, right? If only that we have parties, some of us for whom it makes a difference that which party we're going to vote for based on the polls or less. So some are going to make a consideration based on who they might form a coalition with or less so. What I want to do as the last part of this conversation today is talk about the current event that we are all in the midst of, and I'm guessing all of you are having various live and online conversations about it in the last days, week, and now it appears that the text of this memorandum of understanding between the United States and Iran is formally public. That's the elephant in the room. Now, I don't want to get into the issues of how happy we are with that, or the terms, or the abandonment, or any of that. Those are important. What I'm curious to know now, 3 months away from the third anniversary of the October 7th massacre, 4 months from the election that's coming up, Netanyahu is the head of the government. He's been head of the government. He's our longest serving prime minister. How will the deal, as it's being presented now, whether it's good or bad for Israel, how will that affect your vote, and how do you project that that might affect the vote of the Israeli public? Anyone?
This um, people are now listening to me when I've said you can't trust Bibi, that he is not strong, he's not a patriot, and he's not on the right. I heard him say in 2008, he spoke at the International Bloggers Conference in the old Nefesh B'Nefesh office. And I was no more than a meter away from him, sitting in the front row, no surprise. And he was then out of office in between his terms. And he gave and when I'm prime minister again, and I will be prime minister again, I will do it as a centrist.
He said that.
And he said it. I blogged it in 2008. If you look at Shiloh Musings, impressive, you'll find what I wrote then. So it's not, just a senile brain coming out with it. And he has not surprised me one iota. He has taken down, he's not right. He never was right. He's an actor.
So but my question is, how does that affect
He
your
gets
vote? How do
rightist
you
votes, and the more that's happening, the more people who once thought they could trust him don't trust him. People from the right.
because of this deal?
Because of his weakness. I've been saying all along he's weak. When you see him standing next to Trump, and they're both wearing the dark blue suit and the same shade red tie, he looks pathetic. And I don't care where you are on the political spectrum, it should be an embarrassment. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. About Iran. Is that okay?
What were you going to say, Arnie?
I was going to say, in terms of the Iran agreement, I think most Israelis who've been here for a while, I don't know what that means, 5 years, 25 years, whatever the definition
What about
is.
going on 56 years?
So Israelis who've been here a while, whether they were born here or moved here, we like to wait and see. We like proof. And so it might be that what happens today, have a great, ceremony, signing a wonderful agreement that's, let's say it was perfect for whatever that means to you, we'll know better in a month or 2 or 3 what it really means when we see,
oh, come on.
I actually
I'd like to come in here if I may.
Yes.
Okay, Rolene.
I mean, the good news is the general consensus around the world is that this memorandum of understandings a pretty crappy agreement, and I agree, it's not a final agreement, and there is a clause now that miraculously has appeared that parties can withdraw at any time, and I think that's the get out of jail card. But if we're talking about personalities, and I know this is going to be very unpopular with some people on the panel, we also have to consider when we form coalitions who we put in very, very important portfolios, because we have had in the last couple of years, we have had members of our government who, unfortunately, through their actions and through words that they have said, have brought this country into extreme ill repute.
Yeah, but that happens by just members of Knesset too, not just members of the council.
And members of Knesset too. And I think that this election for us is a reckoning. This is an opportunity to course correct. I am hoping that when we go into coalition building and when people go to the polls, they will take into account that this is an opportunity for Israel to try and course correct for its own citizenry, that we don't have this massive polarization, but also think very, very carefully about who we're putting in and where.
Okay, but Rolene,
Because we have a lot of image and relationship cleaning up to do.
Okay, Erica, please.
I kind of am going to expand upon that. I wanted to say that it's very clear from all the wheeling and dealing that you need someone formidable and someone very smart and very strong who people respect, who seems like they can actually do the job. Like, I think Bennett has the brain power to do it. And that's the kind of thing. And I think Lieberman also has the brain power to do it. He's also, what I love about him, I'm sorry, I'm just speaking about people, is that he doesn't back down. And that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Because clearly you have to have an iron will and you have to be someone who can really be in that sphere. And it's not easy. And I think a lot of people used to vote for Bibi because they thought he makes amazing speeches. He spoke to the United Nations. He's so talented. He's so strategic. I don't think he did a bad job with Trump at all. I think this whole thing was crazy. But, and in fact, when they stand together, to me, Bibi looks more reasonable because Trump's just spewing off stuff. And like Bibi's just standing there wisely looking on, and, but I think that we need to see that when we hand over, whenever that is, the prime ministership, to somebody else, are they smart enough? Do they have what it takes? And that's what I'm going to be thinking of with the Iran deal too. Like, is this somebody that can help us now in Israel that's living with this ridiculous reality? And how are they going to move forward for us now that we kind of dwell alone, at least for the moment? And
I think that's
an interesting answer to the question, Erica, because rather than answering specifically what I asked, which is how much does the deal impact who you're going to vote for, it's dealing with the reality and determining who you'll vote for. That's a good.
I think, Erica, I think that point was actually a very strong point. Also, I was going to answer the question by saying that I don't think this deal is what's going to determine anybody's vote. I think that if anything, it'll be how Netanyahu reacts to the deal, because he hasn't said a thing in a week, and Netanyahu hasn't opened his mouth. I think it's how he's going to react to this deal. It's going to determine how much support he continues to get or how much support he loses. But I like Erica's train of thought here, that it's a completely different reality now in the world. The reality, the way it seems now anyway, until Netanyahu reacts, is that the United States is dictating Israeli policy and Israeli responses. I mean, last week you had Iran firing at Israel and Israel firing at Iran, and Donald Trump turning around and saying, "If you boys don't behave," like he's the parent and we're the children, and Israelis generally don't react very well to that. So the question is, who now takes the position in the new reality where they have to deal with a Donald Trump who isn't necessarily beholden to the Israeli leader when that leader is Netanyahu, like everybody thought he would be, or like he was for the first 6 years. Okay,
Good
now
observation.
now who's gonna be able to deal with him on a different footing?
Good observation. Thank you. Mark, you didn't say anything. Well, I know it's not going to affect your vote because you're not voting for Netanyahu anyway, but what's your sense of how the deal and the conversation that we're having right now will affect your vote or that of other Israelis like us who are undecided?
Yeah, so I'd like to mention that I watched Netanyahu's speech the other night, his press conference that he gave, and he was attacked by the media, but mainly from the right. Like the media, who's considered leftist, according to a lot of right wingers in Israel, the public television station Cotton 11 and everything, but he came out looking very weak. And how it looked at the at where I work, around the water cooler and everything, that it does affect Tosha. It's going to affect him, I think, very badly, very poorly. And we also saw in the polls yesterday that it really affected them, and they got only 23 mandates in the
Who is
polls.
this, Likud? I didn't see the poll.
I didn't
Yeah, I
either.
watched it on Channel 11, on Can 11, where actually also, yeah, it was a very interesting poll. But anyways, it was 23 mandates for Likud and 21 mandates for Eisenkot. The first time where you see that
Wow.
Eisenkot has a substantial lead over Bennett's party,
Yes.
which is very interesting. And this looks like it was affected very much by what we saw the other night at the press conference,
But does
which
anyone really think Bibi could have done something to sway Trump? I
Thank
think
you.
Trump does whatever he wants, whenever he wants. So I
Well,
don't think,
the
Some
converse
people
to
did
that,
think that.
Erica, is could anyone have done better?
Some people do
right.
think that because Netanyahu has had a very, very close relationship with Trump basically throughout their entire last 20 years, because they've known each other since long before. And that was shown very strongly during Trump's first term and during this war up until April. And now people are starting to see daylight between the two of them, and I think that that's weakening Netanyahu.
Well, it goes
There's
even further,
something
I
in
think, when Trump has interfered with the Israeli scenario when he says to President Herzog that if Netanyahu is convicted, just you should pardon him already and just get it over with. Um, how does that play into the fact that he's supposed to be strong, independent? We're supposed to worry about whether he's guilty or not in his trials that's happening, etc.
Oh,
there are great
and by the way, Batya,
similarities.
just one moment, Batya. The other complementary piece to that, Arnie, is that this past week Trump also said something about maybe Netanyahu doesn't even want to run. So it's yeah, he wants the president to give him a pardon, but he's tossing doubt on his candidacy to begin with. Which, Mark, I'm glad you mentioned the press conference where he stated unhesitantly that yes, of course, he's running. Batya, you were saying something?
Yeah, well, there's oh, now I've been losing track of what I was saying.
Hate it when that
Um,
happens.
I tend not to trust politicians when
the-
their mouths are
Same,
moving.
same.
there's something in the history of the United States that I've noticed for a gazillion years, and I can say a gazillion, that America's always nicer to those who are trying to attack them or be anti. Now, we don't get the same good things that Americans' enemies get. They have this thing, if you're really nice to America, they don't try to buy you. We also, the so-called aid that comes to Israel is really help for American military industry. We don't get money aid. This has been for years. We've given some of our actual inventions to the Americans, and then we can't make them without getting American parts. And the minute we get American parts, we can't sell what we make without American approval. and it's very bad for our economy.
I think they call
And
those
this
golden
has been
handcuffs.
going on, but the United States, I remember I was still even in high school. The countries that act more anti-American, no matter who's the president, gets more because the Americans want to win them.
Okay.
And
There's,
we're too nice.
Can I add
there's
one
a
thing?
story.
Sorry, I know that
Yes.
we're
Yes.
Uh,
Erica,
um
last word.
okay, I know that this is also a spiritual podcast. So I've been trying to understand it myself because it's been a great disappointment and it's very hard to understand what's going on and where we're going to go. And I had much better hopes for this. But, ultimately, it seems to me that Israel is a nation that dwells alone, and you have to believe in God and not man. So I think that's really been proven here. So, as someone who is spiritual, that really brings me a lot of comfort. So,
That's a great high point
One,
and anchor for the this conversation tonight, but also for the rest of this conversation leading up to the election. I want to thank you all, Rolene, Batya, Yehuda, Mark, Erica, and Arnie. I apologize to you all because I don't think we really got into this in depth, but I'm glad we did what we did today. The bad news is we didn't cover enough. The good news is that there's a lot more still on my notes to cover, and I know for each of you, as many of you recommended, and I got questions from the last conversation, that there are going to be a lot of questions. There are going to be a lot of current events, things that we can't predict between now and approximately a month from now when we have our next conversation. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm super grateful, and let me just thank you all, and we will schedule the next one shortly. With that, I also want to conclude by thanking our sponsors, Priscilla Flory, who was going to join us tonight. Unfortunately, wasn't able to make it. But Priscilla, I always will say, since my mother and my wife's mother died 20 years ago, 6 weeks apart, Priscilla has been the closest thing that my wife and I have to a living mother. And Priscilla is a Christian woman from Atlanta, Georgia. So she's always loved what we do with Genesis 1, 2, 3, supported and sponsored, and she is a generous sponsor of our program, and also the Coin family as well, who I'm looking forward to seeing on my upcoming trip in the United States next month. We want to also always remind people that Inspiration from Zion and the Genesis 1, 2, 3 Foundation programs are made possible by donations. So please consider joining us to help continue the dialogue and building bridges. This week, I had the personal privilege of celebrating the wedding of two friends' children, and so this episode is in honor of the weddings of Yonina and Yoshi, and Gedalia and Ava, and to their parents, Kenny and Andrea, and Kevin and Heather, one of whose celebrations I ran out on tonight in order to be here with you.
We feel
If you'd
honored.
like to sponsor an episode in honor or memory of a loved one or special occasion, please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com. And we'd always love to hear your comments. And I see the comments already flying about next conversations. So if you have comments, please send them to inspirationfromzion@gmail.com, especially comments about traditional Judaism for our Ask the Rabbi programs. Please share this with others who will also find it of interest, and continue to join us right here where we bring you more meaningful conversations about unique topics relating to Israel that you won't hear anywhere else. Wherever you are in the world, I pray that you and your loved ones are all safe and healthy, and I send my blessings from right here in the Judean mountains. God bless you.